Hi, my name is Kelly Bucalo, and this is my presentation for my quality improvement plan, the titled Effect of Decreasing Sugar Intake on Overall Health. I am currently working as a nurse at Summerlin Hospital, and within my job I found it increasingly difficult to avoid sweets and just the plethora of sugary foods that are all over the place at the hospital. And as nurses, I'm sure many of you have experienced this, that we always have quick energy sources all over the place at the hospital just to grab when we're busy, when we don't have time to take a break and what have you. And I personally have decided, or I did decide for my CQI plan, to reduce the amount of sugar that I intake on a daily basis. I have a family history of diabetes. I've recently noticed over the course of the last 3 years that I've been working at this position that I've gained weight, I've become slightly more anxious, and my sleep quality has been diminishing. So I decided that reducing my sugar would definitely not be a bad thing and could be beneficial for my health. So upon deciding that sugar intake was going to be the thing I wanted to amend within my quality improvement plan, I created the fishbone diagram seen here with the bones on the fish representing people, environment, events, emotions, and materials. I use materials tying into what I was just talking about with the working and the availability of all of the sweets and everything, and piggybacking on top of that, the stress at work within the emotions tab is a big player in this whole thing with me. And I started using sugar as a coping mechanism for sort of a lot of different emotions, and just at different events. If I didn't bring lunch from home, and I would eat what they have in the cafeteria, and that's not always the greatest thing, and just really lacking self-control at its finest. And all of these were specific examples sort of outlining that theme. So to make this change, I utilized the Plan, Do, Study, Act, the PDSA model, and started by developing a plan to reduce my sugar that I was intaking and decide why I wanted to do that, what exactly was my goal at the end of it, how I was going to do that. And then once I finished making that change, looking over my results, and decided from those results what inferences I could make about the change and the whole process. And then at the end went back and decided what about that process could be amended for next time. So during the planning phase, I looked again at my goal, which was, of course, to decrease sugar intake with specific aims to increase my sleep, number of hours of sleep per night, decrease my number of times experiencing restlessness per night, decreasing my daily weight, and decreasing my anxiety level. In order to measure the sleep and the restlessness, I used my Fitbit fitness tracker, which monitors both of those things in terms of hours and times experiencing restlessness. And then I measured my weight each day. And for the anxiety level, I simply just notated when I felt anxious during the day. So essentially periods or times that I experienced anxiety. So here is the data for my planning phase. For my baseline data, 7 days before I decided to cut down the sugar from March 26th to the 1st of April. I collected data for all of these variables, and then they're listed here in this chart. And then I calculated the mean values for each of those variables as well. Following that pre-intervention 7-day period, I decided I was going to start the do phase. And I found out after looking on the American Heart Association website that the recommended daily allowance for an adult woman for sugar intake throughout the day is a maximum of 25 grams. And just by simply looking at different nutrition labels, I could already tell that that was far less than what I was typically ingesting, especially over the course of the last 6 months with holidays and what have you, and just my typical habits as mentioned before. So I thought it might be a little daunting, but I decided I was going to limit my sugar intake to 25 grams a day at maximum for 7 days. And here's the data for that do phase. I collected data for 7 days during the intervention period from April 2nd to April 8th and notated all those values in this chart, and then of course calculated the mean values at the bottom. So the charts don't look too exciting until you finally actually compare the data from the pre-intervention and the intervention periods, which is what I've done here. So the chart on, or the graph rather, on the left is a comparison of pre and post-intervention sleep and anxiety. I split the sleep and anxiety and the weight, which is the graph on the right, simply because the values were so differentiated. I just thought it was a little bit clearer of a picture to split them. At any rate, the graph on the left, it shows that my total hours sleep, this is all mean values, from the pre-intervention to the post-intervention or the intervention period, I did increase my amount of sleep by decreasing my sugar intake. I also decreased the amount of periods of restlessness I experienced per night while asleep. I decreased the times I felt anxious, and I also decreased my daily weight for this period. So again, just reiterating those results on the previous graphs, I did have an increase in my amount of sleep per night. I had a decrease in the times I experienced restlessness. I had a decrease in my daily weight, and I had a decrease in the times anxiety was felt each day. The most significant of which was in the restlessness. That was a significant drop, and the least significant was in the total hours of sleep, but all of the values were noted to be of a beneficial or advantageous change in my overall health, which was the goal at the very beginning. So for the final phase and the ACT phase, I looked back at all of the variables for the quality improvement plan and decided that it was a success. All 4 variables that I was concerned with were desirable outcomes, and this is what I perceive as a change which can be implemented permanently. It's something that over the course of 7 days there was already data that suggested that my overall health, as evidenced by sleep, anxiety, and weight, body weight, were improved, and that in going forward in terms of changing the plan of the quality improvement, just to continue doing this and potentially even cut down from 25 grams, potentially maybe less than that, ideally, if possible. This is just a stepping stone for me. But in terms of changing the PDSA, I think that everything organized how it was worked out pretty well. So I did not make any changes to that plan. Overall, after completing the assignment, I found it genuinely remarkable that all of those variables were positively affected by the reduction of sugar intake in my diet. Of course, I hoped that would be the result, but seeing as real data for over the course of 7 days made such a change in all of these things, and just by the use of the PDSA model, these variables which I thought, the environment, people, materials, all of those which I thought were contributing to my sugar intake, of course, just by genuinely thinking about it, I didn't, it wasn't until I put together all of the specifics and pulled apart and pieced apart all of these things that it became really concrete and evident that this change is a beneficial change to make in my life and has been relatively easy. And it's nice that I was forced to make it, and I hope that I can continue to push forward and keep my sugar level that I intake to a minimum.